Hey everyone, my name is Michael, and today I want to tell you about an amazing story that happens in the Bible. Now, maybe you are kind of new to the Bible, and that's totally okay. And I want to tell you about something that happens that is a miracle. And if you don't know what a miracle is, it's really simple. A miracle is something that happens that is supernatural, something that doesn't normally happen, something that someone amazing, someone that is not like you and me would be able to do. And I want to tell you that person is Jesus. And if you're not really that familiar with Jesus, or maybe you don't know about Jesus as we know about him in the Bible, what I want to tell you about Jesus is number one, that he is God. And this is amazing. It's kind of hard to get our minds around that, but Jesus is God in human flesh. He came down, as was spoken over many, many, many years, came down and was born and lived this perfect life and spent 3 years going around and doing amazing works, helping people, feeding people, taking care of people, performing all kinds of different miracles before he was actually taken, arrested, and killed. And he was killed for our sins, but it's okay because we know that this was talked about. This was the plan all along. And he, 3 days later, rose from the dead. And through faith in Jesus, we can have new life. Now, before he was ever arrested, before he ever went and died on the cross for our sins, which is an amazing story. We're not there that today. I want to tell you about a miracle that takes place. That's one of my favorite things. And what the Bible tells us, what's really cool, is there is a miracle that takes place that Jesus does. And this is actually recorded in all four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's the only miracle that is in all four Gospels, and it's so cool. And the Bible tells us that there is a large crowd that's been following Jesus. And you can imagine they're so excited to see all the amazing things that Jesus is doing and healing and helping and teaching, and they're just blown away by what Jesus is doing. And so there's a large crowd. The Bible tells us that there's 5,000 people, but a fun fact about this is that there's actually probably more. Those are probably just the men. So we're talking maybe up to 10,000 people. And as you can probably assume, the disciples were really overwhelmed. They're trying to help Jesus. There's all these people, and they realize that they're hungry. The Bible even actually tells us that Jesus has compassion. He feels for the people because they're hungry and they need there's a physical need that they have that Jesus wants to help meet. And they can't just go to a Chick-fil-A, right, and get some food. You guys love Chick-fil-A, right? Yeah, I do too. Jesus chicken, right? So they can't just go to Chick-fil-A, right, and get some quick food. They're out in the middle of the wilderness. They want to talk. They want to hear from Jesus, and they can't just go into the town and get some food. And so what happens is there is a boy, and he has simply some bread. It says 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And Jesus is able to perform a miracle. And as we find out, Jesus is able to do so much with so little. And he's able to actually feed the entire crowd, is what we see. This is crazy. He also later goes on to talk about how he is the bread of life, which is a really fun connection. But back to this. What's really cool about this is I want to read this passage. This is in the Gospel of Luke, says this specifically. And it says, "And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing over them. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. And they all ate and were satisfied, and whatever was left over was picked up, 12 baskets of broken pieces." So there was leftovers, and they picked them up and they didn't waste them. So everybody had their fill just from a loaf of bread, and he used the disciples to do this miracle. Jesus could have just said, you know, let there be food, and there could just poof, it could just pop down all in front of them. But instead, he used the disciples and their obedience, and their willingness to have to help in this miracle. And so that took place. And you might feel I have this journal I gave my daughter. When I gave it to her, it was really clean and it didn't have scribbles all in it. But as you could see, there's just scribbles all over the pages. And you might right now feel kind of like this, where you're like, yeah, I've made some mistakes in my life and it's not perfect. I don't really think God could ever use me. Well, I want to tell you, you might feel like this, but the disciples were not perfect either. And what the disciples had was simply this: they were open to what God wanted to do, they were open to how Jesus would use them. And because they were open handed and were obedient and listened to God, he was able to use them to perform this amazing miracle. It was through the hands of the imperfect disciples. And you might say, hey, who am I in this story? Well, you're not Jesus. Jesus gets to be Jesus. And maybe honestly, you feel like just kind of the hungry person in the crowd. You might feel like that. But some of you would say, hey, I want to follow Jesus. I want to help people. And I want to tell you that if you are obedient, if you listen to Jesus, if you have open hands to what God would do with your life, that God will use you in incredible ways to help feed hungry people. You're awesome. Thanks so much for listening.